Hello listener. If you're hearing this, you still remember what sunlight looks like. If you're new here, subscribe and comment where you're listening from. This story isn't like the others. This isn't about military bunkers or mountain peaks or underground silos. This is about a place that was built to make children laugh. A place designed for happiness and wonder and magic. And how that place became my prison, my nightmare, and somehow my salvation. My name is James Parker, and before the world ended, I was a night security guard at Wonderland Park in Valencia, California. Most people don't know this park. It's not Disneyland or Universal Studios or any of the famous ones. Wonderland was a second-tier theme park that opened in 1987 with big dreams and bigger debts. By 2010, it had filed for bankruptcy. By 2015, it was completely abandoned. The owners had walked away. The rides sat rusting. The buildings decayed. The animatronics froze mid-gesture, their painted smiles slowly cracking in the California sun. But the property was valuable. 200 acres of land, just 30 miles from downtown Los Angeles. Real estate developers bought it in 2020, planning to demolish everything and build luxury condos. Then COVID hit. Then the economy tanked. Then the developers went bankrupt. The park sat in legal limbo for another 4 years while lawyers argued over who owned what. That's where I came in. In 2024, the property management company hired a small security firm to maintain a presence at the abandoned park, prevent vandalism, stop urban explorers from breaking in and getting hurt on unstable rides, keep homeless encampments from forming in the buildings. Basic security work. I was one of 3 guards rotating shifts. We'd each work 3 nights a week, walking the park grounds, checking fences, noting any damage or intrusion. The pay was decent and the work was easy. Mostly I'd drive around in a golf cart, shine my flashlight at shadows, and feel deeply creeped out by the abandoned park at night. Because Wonderland Park at night was genuinely unsettling. During the day, abandoned theme parks have a melancholy quality. You can see the faded paint, the broken rides, the weeds growing through concrete. It's sad but comprehensible. At night, though, something changes. The darkness fills in the decay. Your flashlight beam catches things that shouldn't move but seem to. The wind makes sounds that echo through empty buildings designed to amplify children's screams of delight. And everywhere, other mascots. Wonderland had been themed around a fantasy kingdom. The park's mascots were anthropomorphic animals: King Leo the lion, Princess Bella the rabbit, Sir Reginald the bear, Captain Hook the parrot, and about a dozen others. During operations, these characters had wandered the park, hugging children, posing for photos, leading parades. After closure, their costumes were stored in various buildings around the park. But the animatronic versions, the robotic figures that performed in shows and rides, those were still in place. Frozen mid-wave, mid-bow, mid-song, walking past a darkened theater and catching a glimpse of King Leo's 8-foot animatronic form standing motionless on stage, his mechanical eyes reflecting your flashlight beam. His mouth locked in a permanent smile showing all his teeth, that never stopped being deeply wrong. I'd been working security at Wonderland for 8 months when the outbreak started. June 2024, I was scheduled for a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday rotation. On Tuesday, June 18th, everything was normal. I arrived at 8 p.m. for my night shift, checked in with Marcus, the day guard, who said everything was quiet. He left. I began my rounds. The park was laid out in a rough circle. The main entrance led to Kingdom Square, a central hub with a castle facade and a fountain that hadn't run in years. From there, 6 themed areas branched out like spokes: Adventure Bay, pirate theme; Fairy Tale, Forest Princess, fantasy theme; Future World Space, sci-fi theme; Wild West Territory, Cowboys theme; Creature Caverns, Monster, Halloween theme; and Celebration Street, Main Street USA theme with shops and restaurants. My normal routine was to drive the golf cart around the main pathways, checking each area, then park and do walking patrols through the buildings. 3 full circuits over a 10-hour shift. The park was big enough that each circuit took about 3 hours. That Tuesday night, I was on my second circuit around 11 p.m. when I noticed something odd. My phone had no signal. Cell service at the park was usually spotty, but I always had at least 1 bar. Now I had nothing. I tried calling my supervisor. The call wouldn't go through. I drove to the security office near the main gate, a small trailer that served as our base. Tried the landline, dead. That was weird. The landline never went down. I turned on the small TV we had in the office. Most channels were static, but I found a news station. The broadcast was chaotic. Shaky camera. The anchor looked terrified. She was reading reports of violent attacks across Los Angeles. Hospitals overwhelmed. Police unable to respond to calls. Stay indoors. Avoid contact with anyone acting strangely. The broadcast cut to helicopter footage of LA fires. Gridlocked traffic. People running through streets. The helicopter camera zoomed in on a crowd attacking someone. The violence was explicit and horrifying. Then the feed cut out completely. Just static. I stood in the security trailer, holding the remote, trying to process what I'd just seen. This couldn't be real. It had to be a hoax. Some War of the Worlds radio drama thing. I went outside, looked south toward Los Angeles. The city lights were visible as a glow on the horizon 30 miles away, but the glow looked wrong. Orange instead of white. Fires. I got back in the golf cart and drove to the parks. Highest point, the peak of Mount Wonderland, a artificial mountain in Adventure Bay that used to house a log flume ride. Climbed to the top, looked south. Los Angeles was burning. Multiple points of fire visible across the city, smoke rising into the night sky, lit from below by flames. I stood there for maybe 20 minutes, watching the distant city burn, and tried to figure out what to do. Drive home to my apartment in Newhall, 15 miles away. But what if the roads were as bad as that news footage showed? Stay here at the park. But I had maybe 2 days of food in the security trailer. After that, I'd have to leave anyway. While I was debating, I heard engine, multiple vehicles, coming fast up the access road to the park. I ran back down the mountain, got in the golf cart, drove toward the main gate. A convoy of vehicles was approaching. Cars, trucks, motorcycles, maybe 20 vehicles total. They pulled up to the gate and stopped. People got out, 30 or 40 of them. They looked scared, desperate. A woman stepped forward. Please, we need shelter. Those things are everywhere. We saw your lights. Please let us in. I stood at the gate, hand on my radio, even though I knew it wouldn't reach anyone. This is private property. I can't authorize access. A man pushed forward. We don't need authorization. The world is ending. Just open the fucking gate. The crowd pressed against the fence. The chain link rattled. The gate was locked with a chain and padlock. It would hold, unless they decided to ram it with one of the trucks. I made a split-second decision that I've regretted every day since. I'm sorry, I can't let you in. There's no supplies here, no shelter, just empty buildings. Keep driving north. Get out of the city. The woman who'd spoken first started crying. Please. We have children. Please. I'm sorry. They stood there for another 5 minutes, pleading, threatening. Then one of them spotted something back down the access road. Headlights. Lots of them. Coming fast. They found us. Someone screamed. The convoy scrambled back into their vehicles. Engines roared. They fled north, up the highway, leaving dust and the smell of gasoline. I watched the approaching headlights. Not organized traffic, just chaos. Vehicles weaving. Some crashed into ditches, some abandoned in the road, and between them, figures, running, chasing. I didn't wait to see more. I got in the golf cart, drove back into the park, to the security trailer, grabbed my backpack with my dinner and water, locked the trailer, drove to the park's maintenance area. The maintenance complex was a cluster of warehouses and workshops where ride parts and equipment had been stored. I knew one of the warehouses had a loading dock that opened onto a service road that connected to a different exit than the main gate. If I needed to escape, I could leave that way. I parked the golf cart inside the warehouse, rolled down the loading dock door, locked it from inside dark, and then I sat in the dark warehouse, surrounded by dusty ride parts and animatronic components, listening to the distant sounds of chaos, and realized I'd just locked myself in an abandoned theme park during the apocalypse. Day 1 started when I woke up in the maintenance warehouse on Wednesday morning, June 19th. I'd slept fitfully on a pile of old costume pieces, using a furry mascot head as a pillow. Sunlight was streaming through high windows. Everything looked surreal in the daylight, warehouses full of broken dreams and mechanical parts. I needed to assess my situation. I had the clothes on my back, my security guard uniform, a flashlight, a radio that didn't work, my phone with no signal, my wallet with $47 cash, and in my backpack, a sandwich, a bag of chips, a Coke, and a bottle of water. My planned dinner from last night, that was it. That was all I had. But I was inside a 200-acre theme park. There had to be resources here. Food in the old restaurants, water in pipes, shelter in buildings. I just had to find them. I spent the morning exploring the maintenance complex, found tools, screwdrivers, wrenches, pliers, wire cutters, found work lights that ran on batteries, found a first aid kit, found maps of the park that showed all the service tunnels and underground access points, Found a golf cart charger station. The carts ran on electric batteries that could charge from the park's power grid, but that power had been cut years ago. Most importantly, I found the park's backup generator system. Wonderland had been designed with redundancy for power outages. Multiple diesel generators could power essential systems if the main power failed. The generators were old and might not work, but they were there. I checked the fuel tanks. Still had diesel. Maybe 500 gallons total. If I could get a generator running, I'd have power for lights, water pumps, maybe even some of the park systems. I spent the afternoon working on Generator 3. It looked like the newest of the 5 generators in the maintenance complex. Changed the oil, replaced filters, checked connections, hit the starter, nothing, dead batteries. I spent another hour finding the battery bank for the generators, jump-starting it from one of the golf cart batteries. Tried again. The generator coughed, black smoke poured from the exhaust. Then it caught. The diesel roar echoed through the warehouse. I'd done it. I had power. I started throwing breakers, connecting the generator to different circuits. Lights came on in the maintenance building. Water pumps started humming. And then I heard something that made my blood freeze. Music. Carousel music. Coming from somewhere in the park. I ran outside the maintenance building, looked toward Kingdom Square. The central carousel, a beautiful antique merry-go-round with hand-carved horses, was spinning. Lights flashing, music playing from crackling speakers. The horses bobbed up and down on their poles, ridden by ghosts. I'd accidentally powered up part of the park's attraction systems. Rides that were connected to the maintenance power grid were activating. I ran back to the generator, started shutting down circuits, trying to figure out which one controlled the carousel. The music stopped. The carousel slowed and stopped. Silence returned to the park. I sat on the warehouse floor, breathing hard. I needed to be more careful. I couldn't just turn on power randomly. Every ride, every system, every light that activated could attract attention from outside the park, could bring the infected to the gates. Day 2, I began systematic exploration. The park was divided into 6 themed areas. I decided to search each one methodically, looking for supplies. I started with Celebration Street, the main entrance area. This had been the park's shopping and dining hub. A dozen storefronts lined a fake street designed to look like 1900s small-town America. Most shops were already looted by previous urban explorers or stripped by liquidators when the park closed. But I found some useful items in back storage rooms. 3 cases of bottled water, expired but sealed. A case of canned soda. Also expires a box of individually wrapped candy. Surprisingly still good paper plates. Plastic utensils. Napkins, a working portable radio. Battery powered. A camping lantern, a cardboard box full of Wonderland Park merchandise. T-shirts. Hats. Stuffed mascots. Not much, but more than I'd had. The radio was the most valuable find. I took it to the roof of a building, extended the antenna fully, and scanned AM and FM bands. Most stations were dead, but I found a few broadcasts. AM 640 emergency broadcast loop. Remain in your homes. Avoid contact with infected individuals. Military and emergency services are responding. This is not a test. FM 102.7 crackling voice. Male. Terrified. The 101 freeway is completely blocked. Don't try to go south. They're everywhere. If anyone hears this, head to the mountains. Higher elevation than static. FM 89.3 classical music. No voice, just music playing on automation. Nothing helpful. No rescue information. No safe zones. Just fear and automated broadcasts. Day 3, I moved my base of operations from the maintenance warehouse to somewhere more secure. I chose the castle. The centerpiece of Kingdom Square was Wonderland Castle, a 3-story structure designed to look like a fairy tale castle. It had been the park's signature attraction, housing a dark ride called King Leo's Quest, where visitors rode cars through scenes of the park mascots on an adventure. The castle was built like a fortress. Thick walls, few windows, all high up, heavy doors, multiple levels, and most importantly, it had a clear view of the entire park from the top tower. I spent day 3 moving supplies to the castle, made multiple trips with the golf cart, hauling water, food, tools, batteries, everything I'd scavenged. Set up a living space in one of the castle's upper rooms, a storage area that had once held spare animatronics. I moved the creepy robots to a different room and made a bed from old costume materials. The castle had another advantage, the Dark Ride's track system. The ride cars had run on an electric track through scenes on the 1st and 2nd floors. The track created a maze of corridors, turns, and rooms. If anyone got inside the castle, navigating it would be confusing, but I knew the layout. I could move through it in the dark using the maintenance walkways. Day 4, I discovered the tunnel system. I'd seen references to service tunnels on the maintenance maps but hadn't explored them yet. Most theme parks have underground tunnels for employees to move around without being seen by guests. Wonderland's tunnel system connected major attractions, allowing mascot characters and staff to appear and disappear magically. The main tunnel entrance was in Kingdom Square, hidden behind a fake wall in a gift shop. I opened it and looked down. Stairs descending into darkness, cold air rising from below. I grabbed my flashlight and descended. The tunnel at the bottom was concrete, maybe 6 feet wide and 7 feet tall. Pipes and electrical conduits ran along the ceiling. Emergency lighting boxes were mounted every 20 feet, but they were dead. No power down here. I walked the main tunnel. It extended in multiple directions. Side passages branched off. Some had signs: 2 creature caverns, 2 Wild West, 2 fairy tale forests. The tunnel system covered most of the park. As I explored, I found storage rooms built into the tunnels. Some had spare parts for rides, some had old costumes and props, and one, gloriously, had food. Emergency supplies. The park had apparently stored non-perishable food in the tunnels in case of disasters. I found 20 cases of canned soup, 15 cases of canned vegetables, 10 cases of canned fruit, 5 cases of canned tuna, multiple boxes of crackers, chips, and snacks, most stale but edible, a case of emergency water pouches. This changed everything. I'd gone from 2 days of food to potentially for months if I rationed carefully. Day 5, I heard them for the first time. I was in the castle tower using binoculars to survey the park perimeter when I heard engines, vehicles on the access road. I watched through the binoculars as 3 cars pulled up to the main gate. People got out, maybe 10 of them. They looked rough, dirty, armed. I could see guns and knives. They examined the gate. One of them bolt cut the chain. They pushed the gate open. They were coming inside. I watched from my tower perch as they drove into the park, stopped in Kingdom Square, got out and started exploring. They weren't subtle, shouted to each other, kicked indoors, rummaged through buildings. They were scavengers, looking for supplies, and they were thorough. I stayed hidden in the castle, watched them search Celebration Street, moved to Adventure Bay. They spent hours picking through every building. Eventually, they approached the castle, tried the main doors. They were locked. I'd secured them from inside. One of the scavengers shouted, "Fuck it, there's nothing here. Just a bunch of rusty rides." They gave up, loaded their vehicles with whatever they'd found. Not much. I'd already taken most of the good supplies. Drove back out through the main gate. I breathed easier. They hadn't found me. Hadn't found my food stash in the tunnels. Hadn't realized someone was living here. But they'd left the main gate open, and that was a problem. Day 6, I went to close the gate. Needed to secure the perimeter. Drove the golf cart to Kingdom Square, then walked to the main entrance on foot. The gate stood open. Beyond it, the access road stretched south toward the highway. I could see smoke in that direction. Fire still burning somewhere. I grabbed the gate and started pushing it closed. Heavy steel on wheels. It moved slowly. I was halfway there when I heard the moan. Low, guttural, unmistakable. A figure was shambling up the access road. Gray skin, torn clothes. That wrong jerky movement. Infected. It saw me. Changed direction. Started coming toward the gate faster. I pushed harder on the gate. It was so fucking heavy. Moved inches at a time. The infected reached the gate, walked through the opening, reaching for me. I grabbed a piece of rebar from the ground, swung it, connected with the infected's head. It staggered. I swung again. Again. It went down. I stood over the body, breathing hard, rebar in my shaking hands. I'd just killed something that used to be human. Movement caught my eye. More figures on the access road. 5, 10, 20. A whole group of infected, drawn by the noise. I abandoned the gate, ran back to the golf cart, drove into the park as fast as the cart would go. Behind me, the infected poured through the open gate into Wonderland Park. Day 7, I realized I was trapped. The infected had entered the park in significant numbers. I counted at least 40 of them from my castle tower vantage point. They wandered the paths, clustered around buildings, bumped into rides. They seemed confused by the environment. The park was a maze of walkways, buildings, attractions. They'd get stuck in corners, walk into walls, follow each other in circles. Their behavior was mindless but persistent. I couldn't leave through the main gate anymore. Too many of them clustered there. The service road exit from the maintenance area was on the opposite side of the park. Getting there would mean crossing through infected territory. I was stuck in the castle for now. Day 10. I began testing the infected's behavior patterns. I needed to understand them if I was going to survive here. From the castle tower, I observed, they were attracted to sound. When a door slammed somewhere in the park, multiple infected would move toward it. They were attracted to movement, but had poor vision. I could move if I stayed slow and quiet. They couldn't climb well. Stairs confused them. Fences stopped them. They gathered in open areas during the day. Kingdom Square had the most. They seemed to like the fountain area. They dispersed at night, wandering into buildings and attractions randomly. This gave me a survival strategy. Move at night through less traveled areas. Use the tunnel system when possible. Avoid making noise. Stay high, upper floors and rooftops. Day 15. I made my first supply run since the infected arrived. I needed to get to the celebration street area where I'd seen a storage room I hadn't fully searched. Waited until 2 a.m. when most infected had wandered away from the main paths. Left the castle through a second-floor emergency exit onto a catwalk. Crossed to the adjacent building via a maintenance bridge. Descended to ground level in an area with no infected. Moved through shadows. Slow, quiet. Reached Celebration Street. The infected here were clustered inside a restaurant, attracted to something, maybe a smell of old food. I slipped into the target storage room. Found more supplies, batteries, a better flashlight, a propane camp stove with 3 fuel canisters, matches. The return trip was harder. One infected spotted me crossing an open area, moaned. Others turned. I had to sprint the last 50 yards to the maintenance bridge. Climbed fast. They gathered below, reaching up, moaning. I made it back to the castle, breathing hard but alive. Day 20. Power became critical. The generator was burning through diesel fast. I had maybe 300 gallons left. At current usage, that was 60 days. After that, no power at all. That I reduced power consumption drastically. Generator on for only 2 hours per day, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., enough to pump water, charge batteries, run lights for essential tasks. The rest of the time, complete darkness and silence. The park at night with no power was a special kind of terrifying. The darkness was profound. The only sounds were wind, the distant ocean, we were close enough to hear it, and the occasional moan of wandering infected. I'd navigate with a small LED light I kept dimmed. Move through the castle like a ghost. Check my supplies. Eat a cold meal. Write in the journal I'd started keeping. Then sleep fitfully, waking at every sound. Day 30, I discovered something that changed everything. Some of the park's attractions were still running on backup power. I'd been exploring a section of Future World when I heard music. Electronic beeps and boop, coming from the Space Ranger Academy attraction, an interactive dark ride where guests shot laser targets. I approached carefully. The building's entrance was dark, but inside, I could see lights. The ride was running. I went inside. The ride cars were moving on their track, empty, going through the course. The laser targets lit up and made sounds when hit. The whole attraction was operational. This shouldn't be possible. The park's main power was off. But apparently, this ride had its own backup system, maybe solar panels on the roof or a separate battery bank that was still functioning. I explored further and found 3 more attractions still running on backup power. The Carousel in Kingdom Square, I'd discovered this on day 1. Space Ranger Academy in Future World, the Hall of Mirrors in Creature Caverns. The Wonderland Express, a small train that circled the park, all of them were operating in some capacity. Lights on, movement. Sounds like the park was still open, just waiting for guests who would never come. This was both terrifying and useful. The attractions made noise that attracted infected, drawing them away from other areas. But they also created unpredictable danger zones, where machinery I didn't control was operating. Day 40. I had my first real scare with the Mascots. I'd been avoiding the Mascots storage building in Fairy Tale Forest. It was where all the character costumes were kept. Something about that building felt wrong. But I needed materials. The costumes were made of synthetic fur and foam that could be useful for insulation or bedding, so I forced myself to enter. The building was dark. My flashlight beam revealed rows of mascot costumes hanging from racks. King Leo, Princess Bella, Sir Reginald, all the characters, their empty heads stared with lifeless eyes. I was grabbing a Princess Bella costume when I heard movement behind me. Spun around, my flashlight beam caught something. King Leo, standing. Moving, I stumbled backward, hit a rack, costumes fell. King Leo took a step toward me, another step, then I realized it wasn't autonomous. There was someone inside the costume, an infected. They'd wandered into this building. somehow gotten stuck inside the costume, and now they were trapped in it, stumbling around, blind and confused inside the heavy mascot head. The infected inner King Leo costume lurched toward me. I backed away. It tripped over fallen costumes, fell, struggled to get up, its movements restricted by the bulky costume. I ran, got out of that building, slammed the door behind me. But the image of King Leo moving in the darkness stayed with me, would stay with me forever. Day 50. Food rationing became serious. I'd been eating 1 meal per day, but even that was unsustainable. I had maybe 90 days of food left. After that, starvation. The park had nothing edible growing. No fruit trees, no gardens, just ornamental plants and grass. I needed to find more food. Started planning scavenging runs to nearby buildings outside the park. There was a gas station maybe a mile up the access road. A few houses. Maybe they had supplies. But leaving the park meant crossing infected territory on the road. Very risky. Day 60. I attempted my first external scavenging run. Left at dawn. Climbed over the park's back fence at a point far from the main gate. Dropped into scrubland behind the park. Moved carefully toward the access road. The road was a disaster. Abandoned cars, bodies, infected wandering aimlessly. I paralleled the road from about 50 yards away. Staying in the brush, reached the gas station. It had been thoroughly looted. Not even water left. Checked the first house. Same story. Empty. Anything useful was long gone. I was about to check a second house when I heard engines. Vehicles approaching fast from the south. Multiple trucks. I hid in the brush. Watched as a convoy passed. Armed people in truck beds. They looked organized. Military, survivors, raiders, no way to know. They passed without seeing me. I waited another hour, then made my way back to the park. The scavenging run had been a failure. No food. Too much risk. I'd have to make do with what I had in the park. Day 70. I discovered fish. There was an artificial lake in Adventure Bay called Pirates Cove. It had been part of a boat ride attraction. The lake was maybe 2 acres, fed by rainwater and runoff. I'd assumed it was empty of life. But while sitting on the dock one evening, I saw movement in the water. Fish. Real fish. Someone must have stocked the lake years ago, and the fish population had survived, probably eating algae and insects. I improvised a fishing rod from materials in the maintenance warehouse. Line, hook, a piece of hot dog for bait. Caught my first fish on day 71. A base, maybe 2 pounds. I cleaned it with a knife, cooked it over a small propane camp stove. Best meal I'd had in weeks. Fishing became part of my routine. I could catch 2 or 3 fish per week. Not enough to live on, but enough to supplement my dwindling canned food supply. Day 80, the infected learned to use the rides. I was watching from the castle tower when I saw something impossible. An infected had wandered onto the Wonderland Express train. The train started its automatic circuit around the park. The infected rode it, got off at the next station, wandered away. They couldn't operate the rides intentionally, but they could accidentally trigger them. And once the ride started, the infected would sometimes stay on it, creating bizarre scenarios. I watched an infected ride the carousel for 2 hours, going round and round. Watched another get stuck in a ride car on Space Ranger Academy, endlessly looping through the dark ride. The park was becoming surreal, a theme park operating itself with dead passengers. Day 90. I ran out of propane. The camp stove fuel was exhausted. I couldn't cook fish anymore. Had to eat them raw or dried in the sun. Raw fish made me sick twice. I learned to dry them properly after that day 100. A storm hit. Southern California doesn't get many serious storms, but this was bad. High winds, heavy rain, the park infrastructure, already deteriorating, took a beating. From the castle, I watched as a section of the roller coaster in Wild West territory collapsed. Windows broke in multiple buildings, the carousel's canopy tore off and blew away, trees fell across pathways. The power lines to the generator finally failed completely. The last one was critical. Even my limited power was now impossible. The generator was intact, but the wiring to distribute power throughout my part of the park was destroyed. I was now living in complete darkness, except for my dwindling battery-powered lights. Day 110. I moved into the tunnel system permanently. The castle was too exposed, too cold at night without power for heating. The tunnels, despite being dark and claustrophobic, maintained a constant temperature, and they were safer. The infected rarely found the tunnel entrances. I set up a new base in the main tunnel junction under Kingdom Square, brought my supplies down, made a bed from costume materials, organized everything by feel since I had to conserve light. Living underground was its own special hell. The darkness was absolute when I turned off my light. The silence was broken only by dripping water and the occasional thump from above when an infected walked over a tunnel ceiling. But I was surviving. Day 120. I found the animatronics storage room. Deep in the tunnels, behind a locked door I managed to pick, was a large room full of spare animatronic parts. Heads, arms, torsos, all the mechanical components for the robotic mascots. And in the corner, something useful, a battery bank. The animatronics had run on large batteries. This room had maybe 50 of them in various states of charge. I tested them. About half still held some charge. I connected one to my LED lantern. It worked. I had light again. Limited, but better than nothing. Day 130, I heard voices. Not infected moans. Human voices. Coming from above. In the park. I climbed to a tunnel exit point and listened. A group of people was moving through Kingdom Square, maybe 6 or 7 of them, talking quietly, organized. I watched through a grate. They were well equipped, backpacks, weapons, not infected, not raiders, survivors. Part of me wanted to call out, make contact, join them, end the isolation, but another part remembered the people I'd turned away on day 1, remembered how I'd chosen solitude. How could I join a group now? What would I say? How would I explain? I stayed silent, watched them search the park. They found nothing useful. I'd already taken everything. They left after a few hours. I was alone again. Day 140, I realized I was talking to the mascots. The costume heads stored in the tunnels had become my companions. I'd arranged them around my living space, gave them names, had conversations with them. Morning, Leo, how'd you sleep? Princess Bella, what should I have for breakfast? Canned peaches or canned corn? Sir Reginald, I think we need to check the fish traps today. I knew this was insane, knew I was losing my grip on reality, but the mascots were better than the crushing silence. Day 150, the music started. I woke up in my tunnel sleeping area to the sound of Carousel music, faint, distant, but definitely playing. I grabbed my light and climbed to the surface access point under Kingdom Square, emerged carefully into the pre-dawn darkness. The carousel was running, lights flashing, music playing from the crackling speakers. The horses bobbed up and down, but I hadn't turned on any power. The generator was dead. The carousel's backup battery must have somehow recharged. Maybe solar panels. I didn't know about, and triggered the ride to start. And on the carousel, riding the horses, were infected. 5 of them. They'd wandered onto the ride when it started. Now they just stood there, gripping the poles, going round and around. Their gray faces caught the flashing lights. Their mouths hung open. They looked like children on a ride, except children don't moan and drip decay. I watched this scene, infected riding a carousel at dawn in an abandoned theme park, and something broke inside me. I started laughing, couldn't stop, sat on the ground laughing until tears ran down my face. When the laughter finally stopped, I felt empty, hollowed out. Whatever part of me that had been James Parker, security guard, was gone. I was something else now, a ghost haunting a dead park. Day 160, food became critical. I had maybe 2 weeks of canned goods left. The fish were harder to catch. I'd depleted the easily accessible ones. I was eating once every 2 days. My body was consuming itself. I started looking at things I'd never considered food. The ornamental plants could any be eaten. The insects that lived in the park. Protein. The leather from old ride seats, could it be boiled into something edible? Desperation makes you think dark thoughts. Day 170, I found the gift shop stockroom I'd somehow missed. Behind a false wall in one of the Celebration Street shops was a storage room packed with merchandise. And among the t-shirts and stuffed animals, I found it, a case of candy bars, 24 full-size chocolate bars, sealed in wrappers. They were 5 years old. The chocolate was white with age, but they were edible. I rationed them carefully, 1 bar every 3 days. They tasted like dust and chemicals and hope. Day 180, I saw a helicopter mid-afternoon. I was checking fish traps when I heard rotor noise. Looked up, a military helicopter flying low over the park. I ran to an open area, waved my arms, screamed. Knew they probably couldn't hear me over the rotors, but did it anyway. The helicopter circled once. I could see someone in the door looking down, looking at the park, looking at me. Then it flew away. I stood there with my arms still raised, watching it disappear, and felt something die inside me. They'd seen me. They'd seen a living person, and they'd left anyway. Maybe they thought I was infected. Maybe they had orders not to land. Maybe they just didn't care. It didn't matter. The result was the same. I was still alone. Day 190, I made my decision. I was going to leave, try to reach civilization. Staying in the park meant slow death from starvation. Leaving meant possible quick death from infected, but at least it was a choice. Action instead of waiting. I spent 3 days preparing, made a pack with everything essential, water bottles, the last of my food, knife, flashlight, batteries, a length of rope, the best clothes I could find, planned my route. I'd leave through the service road exit, head north away from LA, follow the back roads, try to find a settlement or military checkpoint. Day 195, I made my final walk through the park, said goodbye to each area. Kingdom Square with its frozen fountain, Adventure Bay with my fishing lake, Future World with its still running laser ride, Fairy Tale Forest with the mascot building I'd never fully searched, Creature Caverns with its Hall of Mirrors, Wild West Territory with its collapsed roller coaster, Celebration Street where this had all started. The park had been my prison and my salvation. I hated it and loved it in equal measure. Day 196, I descended to the tunnels one last time, gathered the mascot heads I'd been talking to, lined them up carefully in the main junction. You guys hold down the fort, I told them. I'll come back if I can, knowing I never would. Day 197, I went to the maintenance warehouse, found the service road exit, unlocked it, stood at the threshold looking out at the overgrown road leading away from the park. Freedom was out there, and death, probably more death than freedom, but I was ready. Day 198, I should have left, but I couldn't. Stood at the exit for hours. Couldn't make myself walk through. The park was all I knew now, all I had. Leaving meant admitting it was over. Admitting I couldn't survive here anymore. I went back to the tunnels. Told myself I'd try again tomorrow. Day 199. The parade started. I woke to music, different than the carousel. This was parade music. Triumphant. Celebratory. I climbed to the surface. Dawn was breaking, and moving down the main pathway of Kingdom Square was the Wonderland Parade. Somehow, impossibly, the parade floats had activated. They moved on their predetermined route, pulled by motors that shouldn't work. Each float carried animatronic characters waving and dancing. King Leo on his throne float, Princess Bella on her castle float, Sir Reginald on his forest float, Captain Hook on his pirate ship float. The animatronics moved with jerky, mechanical motion. Their voices played from speakers. Welcome to Wonderland, where dreams come true. And following the parade, stumbling along behind the floats, were the infected, drawn by the music and lights. A mob of gray-skinned figures trailing the parade like grotesque fans. I watched the parade circle Kingdom Square once, twice, 3 times, the infected following it endlessly. It was the most beautiful and most horrifying thing I'd ever seen. Day 200, I left. The parade had shown me something. The park was alive in its own way, still operating, still performing for an audience that couldn't appreciate it anymore. It didn't need me. I walked out the service road exit in the early morning, didn't look back. Carried my pack north through overgrown roads and abandoned neighborhoods. Made it 3 miles before I saw smoke from a settlement. Approached carefully. Found a fenced compound. Living people. Guards. I'm not infected, I called out. I've been alone for 200 days. Please. They took me in, quarantined me for 72 hours, then accepted me into their community. I was saved, but some nights I still dream about Wonderland Park, about carousel music in the darkness, about mascots watching me with lifeless eyes, about a parade that runs forever for an audience of the dead. And sometimes I wonder if I ever really left, if I'm still down in those tunnels, talking to costume heads, slowly losing my mind. The park felt more real than this place ever will. If this story made you rethink childhood memories, made you see theme parks differently, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment. Could you survive 200 days in an abandoned theme park? Stay grounded, stay sane, and remember, some places designed for joy can become your worst nightmare.